What if I told you that you could build an AI startup and make it profitable in just 48 hours? No technical team, no years of coding experience, and no fancy office. Just you, a few AI tools, and a clear plan. Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what I did. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through every single step of how I pulled it off, from brainstorming the idea to landing my first paying customer. Stick around, because by the end, I'll share the one thing that made the biggest difference in turning this crazy goal into a reality. By the way, I've put all helpful tools and resources in the description, so be sure to click on those for handy content, free accounts, and exclusive deals. The first challenge was figuring out what the heck I was going to build. This is arguably the hardest part of any startup because everything stems from the idea. If the idea is weak or doesn't solve a real problem, nothing else matters. So I needed to approach this strategically. I started with good old-fashioned brainstorming, writing down problems I've faced or seen others struggle with. Then I thought about trends in technology, things like AI automation, content creation, and productivity tools. But let's be honest, coming up with a groundbreaking idea on your own can feel like shouting into the void. So I turned to AI itself to help me out. Using ChatGPT, I fed it some of the problems I had brainstormed and asked it to expand on them. For example, I mentioned how podcasters often spend hours researching their guests, finding background details, and coming up with interesting questions. It's a time sink that's frustrating for anyone trying to put out consistent, high-quality content. ChatGPT immediately started throwing ideas back at me. What if there was an AI assistant that could handle all of that? It could gather information, summarize key points, and even suggest tailored questions for interviews. That was the light bulb moment. The idea was simple but powerful. Create an AI research assistant for podcasters. Once I had the idea, the next step was to define it clearly. Who was I building this for? Podcasters, especially those with smaller audiences who don't have the budget to hire researchers or assistants. What was the problem? The overwhelming amount of time and effort it takes to prepare for interviews. And what would the business model look like? I decided to go with a freemium model. The basic features would be free to draw users in, but the more advanced tools, like deeper research insights or custom integrations, would require a paid subscription. It felt like a solid plan, but I wasn't about to dive headfirst without making sure other people saw value in it too. That's where validation came in. Normally, this is the step where you'd spend weeks or even months talking to potential customers, running surveys, and analyzing market data. But with only 48 hours, I had to move fast. I reached out to podcasters I knew personally and asked them directly, "Do you spend too much time researching guests? Would you pay for a tool that could do it for you?" I also jumped into online communities for podcasters, like subreddits and Facebook groups, to see if people were complaining about this exact problem. The response was promising. People were saying things like, "I hate how much time this takes," or "I wish there was an easier way to do this." That was all the validation I needed to move forward. With the idea locked in, it was time to create a brand. I needed a name, a logo, and a cohesive look that would make the startup feel professional, even though it was being built in less time than it takes to binge watch a season of your favorite show. Naming the brand was tougher than I expected. I wanted something that felt relevant to podcasting and research, but was also catchy and easy to remember. After throwing a bunch of ideas around, I landed on PodQuest. It was short, clear, and tied directly to the idea of helping podcasters on their quest for great interviews. I checked online to make sure the domain name was available, and luckily, it was. For the logo, I used Fiverr's AI-powered logo generator. I entered the brand name, filled out a few details, and described the style I was going for: modern, clean, and approachable. Within minutes, I had several options to choose from. I tweaked the design slightly, but overall, it was a smooth process. To complete the branding, I used a tool called Coolors to generate a color palette. I picked a bold shade of blue for trust and professionalism, paired with lighter tones for a friendly and accessible feel. Next, I needed a way to showcase PodQuest to the world. That meant building a landing page. I used Softr, a no-code platform that's perfect for creating simple, responsive websites quickly. The page had a clear headline, "Save Hours of Podcast Research with AI," followed by a brief description of the problem and how PodQuest solves it. I added screenshots of the tool in action, a section outlining the free and premium features, and plenty of call-to-action buttons encouraging people to sign up. With the website live, it was time to focus on building the actual product. Here's where things could have gone off the rails, but I leaned heavily on no-code and AI tools to keep everything manageable. The core of the product revolved around automating research. I used Make as the engine to connect various apps and automate workflows. I used Airtable as the database to store all the information the AI gathered. And Softr came in handy again for the user interface, making sure everything looked polished and was easy to navigate. Here's the general process I followed. I set up scenarios in Make to pull data from the Perplexity API, which gathers information from reliable sources about potential podcast guests. Then, I used the ChatGPT API to process that data, turning it into summaries, notable quotes, and even suggested interview questions. Everything was then fed into Airtable, where it was organized and ready to be displayed on the front end. Within hours, I had a working prototype. But building the product was only half the battle. I needed people to actually use it, and fast. I started reaching out to podcasters on LinkedIn, introducing them to PodQuest and offering them a free trial. I kept the message short and to the point. I just launched a tool that automates podcast guest research. It saves hours of prep time. Would you like to try it out? The responses started coming in, and within hours, I had my first paying customer. It was a small win, but it proved the concept worked. By the end of the 48 hours, PodQuest was up and running with real users and actual revenue. The costs were minimal: subscriptions for Make, Airtable, and Softr, plus the Fiverr logo design. On the revenue side, my first 10 subscriptions, which I got within the first 2 weeks since launching my app, covered these expenses and even left a little profit. It wasn't a massive payday, but it was proof that you can turn an idea into a profitable business in a shockingly short amount of time. Looking back, the key to making this happen was focusing on simplicity. I didn't try to build a perfect product or overthink the branding. Instead, I zeroed in on solving a real problem with the tools I had available. If you've ever thought about starting something of your own, I hope this shows that you don't need a huge budget, a technical background, or even a lot of time to make it happen. So, what do you think? Could you take on a challenge like this? What's your idea? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this helpful or interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.